Hi, my name is Don Marsh, and I'm a CENSE volunteer. I'm a software engineer who worked for Microsoft for many years. Now I develop software for the genomics department at UW. This presentation takes about 15 minutes, but it's the result of hundreds of hours of research by CENSE volunteers. CENSE stands for Coalition of Eastside Neighborhoods for Sensible Energy. We organized a few months after PSE announced the Energize Eastside project early in 2014. Our focus has been on neighborhoods and the residential impacts of this project. Although CENSE members are all volunteers, we have a deep bench on our technical committee. One of our engineers worked for PSE for 25 years as a transmission system planner. It's important to note that we recognize the benefits of living in a thriving economy, so we support the growth plans of each city. But we want to support that growth using smart solutions to our energy needs. We have several problems with Energize Eastside. First, it's a big project that will degrade the beauty and livability of neighborhoods along its entire 18-mile length. It's also expensive. PSE customers will pay hundreds of millions of dollars for infrastructure that may become obsolete shortly after it's built. Before we commit ourselves to that level of investment, we want to be quite sure the project is necessary. PSE has not provided a compelling case for the need, as we hope to show in this presentation. This presentation focuses on three broad topics. First, we look at what PSE says the need is for Energize Eastside. We look at historical energy trends and how PSE is forecasting future demand. We also explain a hidden purpose that we call Energize Canada. We examine the origins and details of a lesser-known reason for this project. Finally, we question what is driving the schedule for the project. We call this Energize Macquarie because it involves the Australian investment bank, Macquarie, which runs the hedge fund that owns PSE. There are a number of topics that aren't covered in this presentation, such as the impact on views and property values, safety concerns, health effects, consideration for the environment, and overall reliability. These are very important issues, and some are prime motivations for many CENSE members, but they're not the focus of this presentation. Let's begin with how PSE describes the need for Energize Eastside. They say, growth is straining the system. They illustrate this with a map that shows electricity being used basically everywhere on the east side, and a graph that shows a steadily increasing demand trend. CENSE strongly disagrees with both of these, but this presentation will focus on the customer demand forecast. The energy landscape has been changing during the past 6 or 7 years. Energy efficiency drives electricity usage trends more strongly than population or economic growth. You can see something happening in this graph of PSE's electricity sales from 2004 to 2012. The vertical axis shows millions of megawatt hours of electricity sold to PSE's customers. Note that the all-time peak usage occurred 6 years ago, and then there has been a downward trend ever since, with an especially sharp dip during the recession. A gradual downward trend in electricity use is also occurring at the national level. Many smart people have been noticing this trend. For example, Lynn Good, the CEO of Duke Energy, says, improvements in energy efficiency have broken the traditional connection between electricity demand and economic growth. MIT Technology Review says, electronic gadgets in U.S. homes used 12% less energy in 2013 than they did in 2010, even though there were nearly 1 billion more devices. And the Wall Street Journal says, electricity demand is likely to be even more subdued in coming years. With these trends in mind, let's take a closer look at PSE's forecast. This might appear to be a chart of normal daily electricity use. It's not. The inset graph shows daily peaks in electricity usage occurring in the morning and evening. If you take the highest of these peaks on the coldest winter weekday, that's what PSE's chart is showing. Fortunately, PSE makes this clear on their website. They say, while the peaks occur for just a few hours per year, there are many more hours each year where operating flexibility is impacted by system capacity. So I hope that's clear. PSE asks us to spend hundreds of millions of dollars and blight our neighborhoods to provide the company with extra operating flexibility for an unspecified number of hours per year. Does that sound like the best use of our money? There are well-known and less expensive ways to solve peak load problems. For example, PSE already proved that time-of-day pricing significantly reduces peak loads and evens out demand. The daily demand graphs shown at left were copied from an article about the program published in 2006. PSE said the demonstration was successful, and the program could be implemented more broadly with the infrastructure that already exists today. Another solution, which is being implemented in California, Hawaii, and New York City, is grid batteries. A nice feature of batteries is that you can just add another one if peak load grows. Adoption of either of these solutions, or both, would eliminate the need for Energize Eastside. Back to the graph, these data points for 2012 and 2013 seem to be at odds with the trend we saw in PSE's electricity sales. PSE was asked if these data points represent actual data values. They admitted that they don't. For more than a month, we've been asking PSE to provide the real values. After many emails, they finally responded with these words: "It would be a time-consuming task for our staff to pull this data together, and we do not believe the data is relevant to the project." This is a surprising claim. It's a rare business that can accurately forecast the future without having actual data about historical trends. The changing growth rates shown in this graph are hard to understand. We see 1% growth from 2012 to 2014, and then the rate accelerates to 2.2% for the next 3 years. What explains this sudden doubling of the growth rate? And then why does the rate go down to only 0.5% for 2017? The 3.4% growth rate in 2020 is even more puzzling. Let's consider a reasonable alternative forecast. This is a 1% growth rate forecast in the Electrical Reliability Study completed for the City of Bellevue in 2012. This projection can be verified using different methods. For example, here is a graph showing population growth on the East Side for the next 26 years. PSE uses this graph on their website to illustrate the need for their project. It shows a 1% annual growth rate. When PSE forecasts a higher rate than that for electricity growth, the only explanation is that new residents will be using more electricity per person than current residents. That seems unlikely, given the trends in energy efficiency. Now let's adjust that 1% forecast by 56 megawatts of load reduction found by PSE's own contractor, E3, using a combination of improved efficiency, demand response, and distributed generation. This finding was published in February 2014, after PSE created their customer demand graph, so it's important to include it. The conclusion is obvious. We don't need Energize Eastside for at least 10 years, and maybe never. In April 2011, Columbia Grid, a consortium of Northwest utility companies including PSE, needed to improve south-to-north transfer capability between the Northwest and British Columbia under emergency conditions. After considering their options, Columbia Grid chose the Energize Eastside project as their preferred plan. On paper, this looks like a smart idea. One project solves two problems. In practice, this feature, which PSE never talks about, makes the company resistant to any alternative solution that doesn't support south-to-north transfer. We suspect PSE is prematurely dismissing alternatives that would be much cheaper and less harmful to our communities, but would serve only East Side needs. On the right side of this slide, I've included a diagram that appears in the Columbia Grid study. Now don't worry, I'm going to simplify this spaghetti with some animation. The goal is to get electricity from Columbia River Hydro to British Columbia. Normally, it can take this path, but what if that line breaks? Well, we can use another path, but what if that line breaks? That's the question posed by this diagram. And the answer is to rebuild these 115 kilovolt lines to 230 kilovolts. Then the electricity can take this path, and this is Energize Eastside. Whether you believe that Energize Eastside serves local residents or Canadians, it's puzzling why PSE is pushing so hard to finish this project in 3 years. The reliability issue for Canada has existed for decades, and the Bonneville Power Administration has never made it a funding priority. The local need for the East Side has been studied by PSE for a long time. If the need was obvious, why did they wait until it became a crisis? We believe the project timetable is being driven by financial considerations rather than real need. PSE was sold to a hedge fund named Macquarie Infrastructure Partners in 2009. The fund is managed by Macquarie, the Australian investment bank. The description you see is from Macquarie's website. I've highlighted the 10-year life of the fund because hedge funds must sell their assets when the fund ends in order to return money to their investors. The exact details of the fund are difficult to find, but we believe it closed to new investment sometime in 2007. If you add 10 years, that puts the end of the fund in 2017. Is it just a coincidence that that is also the date when the East Side exceeds PSE's system capacity? No matter how Macquarie Infrastructure Partners disposes of PSE, the fact is that Energize Eastside will make PSE a more valuable company, and this will benefit fund investors who will reap greater returns on their investment. By our calculations, PSE will receive a guaranteed return of at least 15% on the $200 million cost of this project for the next 30 to 40 years. Aside from the financial incentive, there's another reason for PSE to hurry. Innovations in electricity generation and storage are on the cusp of changing the whole industry. Last May, Barclays downgraded electric utility bonds, saying that the role utilities play is changing in fundamental ways. The CEO of NRG Energy says new appliances will allow consumers to make and store their own electricity. Here we show products from two of our most famous inventors that will address storage and generation. These are just the first of many technology solutions that will significantly change the industry in the next few years. It will soon become obvious that big new transmission lines are no longer necessary to meet our needs. We can summarize our questions like this. Do we really need Energize Eastside? Are PSE's forecasts believable? Is it fair for PSE's customers to pay for emergency backup for electricity flowing to Canada? With the incredible strides being made in energy efficiency, generation, and storage technologies, is it reasonable to eliminate all those options before the public even hears about the project? Here's where things are today. CENSE members successfully encouraged the City of Bellevue to hire an independent expert to offer a second opinion on PSE's claims and to provide a fair evaluation of alternative solutions. This expert will operate outside the EIS process, which will allow a broader scope to the report. Although this is a major accomplishment, CENSE is concerned that there may be insufficient authority to seek real changes at the city level. For this reason, we are beginning to contact state and federal officials and lawmakers. Ultimately, Washington's framework for regulating electric utilities will need major changes to more closely align the utilities' goals and compensation with the priorities of the population they serve. This is a long-term project, but one where CENSE can play an important role. Please help us. Visit CENSE.org. Learn, volunteer, donate. Spread the word. Share this presentation with friends and neighbors at CENSE.org/video. Thank you.